76, so we could do another 76 or 77 next year and still not get to 75.
That is correct, yes, sir.
So if we don't do anything at all, come back next year this time, we're at 77 or more, then we're in trouble.
Yes, sir.
But if we do something, like start this program, and come back at 77 next year, what happens?
At that point in time, EPA may decide to use the EPA administrator's discretion to allow the area extra time to come back into compliance. They may give us the full 5 years to show that these upwind reductions coupled with the actions that are going on within the county make the difference to bring the area back into attainment with the health-based standard. But there's no guarantee of that. There's nothing that says if you create an ozone advance action plan, no matter how robust, no matter how technically sound, you absolutely will get 3 years or 5 years. It just says may. And I don't want to mislead you.
Oh, I know may and shall, yeah.
However, I do want to say I think this is a good opportunity for the Caroline to use minimal resources to get themselves into an action plan that could potentially benefit the area a great deal down the road. I would also say that Caroline County is the only area that we've proposed this to that has the luxury of choice. All of our other areas have air quality that is slightly less clean than y'all's. And so those areas are jumping into the action plan program with both feet. So I'm having a luxury by being able to explain this to you and allow you to tell me if this is something that you would like to pursue. Most of the other areas I go to, I say, air quality is here, and this is something you really need to pursue because otherwise the EPA administrator is got no way of necessarily providing extra time.
Okay, last question. The EPA administrator is in Richmond? No, that's a federal position.
Yes, sir. That is a federal position.
Politically appointed?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Other questions? How does the board wish to move forward with this? My thoughts are is the fact that, yeah, we've been told that attainment, non-attainment is less of an issue what we may have thought in the past, but I think it's an issue. We've been wrestling with this issue for many, many, many years. I remember probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, maybe we had an issue where we tried to work with Stafford County and the two counties working together. So it's been an issue we've had to address and we'll continue to have to address. And we've seen, the ones that have been on this board for some time have seen that the standards have changed to some degree as well along the way. So my thoughts is the fact that we have an October deadline. We've been told that we could withdraw from the program at any point if it becomes too burdensome and we don't feel like it is something we need to move ahead with. My thoughts are we probably need to take action to move ahead with this program in the beginning to see what happens. We've talked about suggestions. We've talked about things that are trying to reduce the ozone levels and pollutant levels. But again, those are just discussions and topics for discussion with the government and everybody else. So my thoughts are, why not move ahead with what we've got that we know? Mr. Underwood.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, but I think the issue is, if in fact the measures of Corbin aren't reflective of the county, then the measures are not real. We have to be able to get some real measures somehow.
We've argued that point for at least 15, 20 years, that it is not a real
Not a true reflection.
Yes, not
a true reflection of the county itself. But the fact is, it's located in Corbin. That's what Caroline County is based on. It's based on that monitor that's located in Corbin. Whatever influences that monitor influences Caroline County. And that's the problem that I have. We can put it off, and then next year we'll be here pleading with someone to try to help us out and to do something different, whereas now we have opportunity to voluntarily do it, and if it doesn't work out, we can withdraw from the program. And if some of these suggestions that have been talked about, we can withdraw.
It's basically just an information campaign at this point. You know, we've got a county alert system. We could say it's a red ozone or orange, whatever those codes are today. You know, don't cut grass, which I'd love to hear you say that anytime. But if something like that, we could do that, and that could be the total program we have, right?
EPA has always looked very favorably upon counties taking episodic measures such as those. Yes, I think that would be appropriate for the size of the county.
Don't get me wrong. I think the suggestions that have been made today, we need to move ahead. But I can tell you, these are not new suggestions. We have discussed these same issues back 10 years ago, back 15 years ago, and it's been discussed. And nothing has been done about it. We've always been told that's where the monitor's at, and that's what we're basing the ozone for Carolina
Can
County.
we have staff go ahead and work with the folks and see what they come up with? Because if Carolina Alert and I think Military Affairs would actually sit down and work with AP Hill and talk about this, because it's not just here, it's other counties as well. I think there could be a win-win there. Let's see what the plan looks like. Is that what we're looking for tonight, is just approval to look at a plan and to work on a plan towards this?
I would like approval to send EPA a letter saying that you're going to participate in the program. I could certainly draft the action plan, and you all could take a look at it in February. And at that point in time, if you thought that it was too burdensome or not something that you wanted to go forward with, we could withdraw you from the program at that point in time.
Okay.
So basically, now again, if we say no, we don't want to be in the program, have a nice day, and next year our numbers are higher, you're going to come back here and not be as nice and friendly. You're going to tell us we have to do something.
I'm
right?
going to be very friendly and polite, but the news will be a little bit more harsh, yes.
Okay. So if we say yes, we're going to get into it, we're basically protecting ourselves from a worst-case scenario.
Potentially, yes. Again, there's no edict that says EPA administrator will absolutely give you extra time.
Okay.
However, they will take into account the idea that you all are looking forward, you're trying to protect the healthy air quality that already exists, and take that into account, is what their guidance says.
Thank you. Is there a motion to move ahead with the pilot program, or with the program that's been talked about?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. Seeley, that we do go ahead and participate in the program. And discussion on that motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion's carried, and you can send a letter indicating, or we will have a letter indicating we are going to participate.
Thank you very much. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
We have to also direct staff to tie into the Carolina Alert System to make sure we do that.
That'll be part of the plan we'll bring back to you before we implement it. Y'all get a chance to approve the plan first.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next item is Treasurer's Report. Mrs. Curran. Good to see you this evening.
Good evening, Mr. Akers, board members, Mr. Cully, and staff. In your package, you should have had a copy of a balance sheet and the revenue report. Noteworthy on the balance sheet, which is the cash as of June 30th of this year, the cash in what I call the general accounts, the cash in bank, which handles the checks, the overnight, which covers those checks, and the LGIP. So what's available for the general needs was $9,079,466, which is up a little over $669,000 from last year at this time. So we are moving in the right direction. If you look on page 4, you'll note that the general fund, now this is cash balance. This doesn't get into Ms. Hatcher's accruals that are coming in for the audit, but the cash balance for the general fund was $7,194,335. So again, that's up from last year. Last year's was a little over $5 million. So we are we're putting money into the general fund, and so we have enough to get through till we collect more in December. As far as the revenue summary, I know Ms. Hatcher has covered a number of the items in her report, and she's coming up right behind me. But of note, I think the taxes, the delinquent taxes for this year, we've stepped up collections. We've tried to send out notices sooner. We did a mailing this summer for some folks with personal property, and the delinquents are over budget. They're over last year in most cases. So, I mean, I think you're seeing, some of that money coming back in, and that's helping the cash flow as well. The current taxes are over budget in most cases, but again, I think that has to do with the increase in the rates more than any effort on our part in our office. The one thing, motor vehicle licenses are down from last year. This is the first year we've gone with the vehicle registration fee, attaching that to the personal property bill that was due June 5th. We've collected some of those, but the good news is that that's a collectible item now. So as we're trying to collect personal property taxes, we're also going to be able to collect those fees. So hopefully that'll reflect in this next budget year. I think the only other thing of note, the utility funds, the revenue, the operating revenues, the billings and collections, we've got a good system going with the utilities as far as trying to work with folks on those collections. So the operating funds look like they're staying right about budget. Unfortunately, the availability fees are still remain short. But again, Ms. Hatcher's got a lot of the same items. Don't want to duplicate things. But do you all have any questions?
Questions of Mrs. Curran?
Ms. Curran, you mentioned the balance sheet, and I'm curious there on page 1. Is that $100 million from Union Bank?
No, sir.
It says debit $100 million, credit $104 million.
Oh, you're looking at the what went in and what went out of the account during the month.
So we put in Union Bank $100 million.
100. It's transfers, like the overnight transfers go in and out on a nightly basis. So depending on how much money is coming in, it goes. It's the sweep.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
So in and out, $100 million went in Union Bank.
The month of June.
For the month
Doesn't
of June.
always happen that way.
That's our tax
yeah,
collections.
this is the
and all
tax
that.
collection. So.
Okay. But debit was $101 million going in, credit $104 million
Overall.
going out.
Overall.
Okay. Thank you very much. It just was a big number.
101 and 104 million. Now, our budget is not but 89 or not 89 million.
It's the sweeps. I mean, it's recording the total debits and credits. Every day money goes into the account, some like at 2 million, 3 million, and then that same number comes out. It's if you notice, in the overnight accounts, overnight deposits, the 82 million that went into the overnight account and the 81 million that came out of the overnights is the sweep. So if you offset that, you'll see more of, if you net the two,
You got it.
is what actually went in and went out of the checking account, not having anything at all to do with the sweep
But that's got to
account.
include debt service and things like that. It's got to. That $100 million. If it doesn't, we need to be at the bank stopping some of that money going out. Isn't it debt service?
It's roughly 20 million went in and out of the account for debt service and money coming in from the taxes, money coming in from the state for the month.
And that includes us and the school system, the
Correct.
county and the school system.
Everybody, utilities.
Can somebody look at that a little closer? Can you look at that a little closer? Our budget's $90 million. How do we put 100 in and out? Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Curran, good job. Thank you. Ms. Hatcher?
Good evening, Chairman Akers, members of the board, and county staff. In your packet is the year-end budget status report for the fiscal year June 30th, 2012. And as I've mentioned before, the last couple of quarters, this report is on an accrual basis, not a cash basis like you hear from Ms. Curran, so our numbers will not match. The only fund that is more of a cash basis right at this point is the school funds. This report is unaudited. The numbers are liable to change slightly after the audit is finished. The auditors will be here starting Wednesday, so wait and see. As you can see in the attached summaries, 96.6% of the budgeted revenues have either been collected or billed for the major funds. This percentage is slightly higher than the previous year, 96.6 versus 95.4. The actual revenues are 2.6 million higher than last fiscal year, which most of that is accounted for in the increased taxes and tax rates. 94.6% of your budgeted expenditures have been expended for your major funds. This percentage is also slightly higher than last year, 94.6 versus 91.8, which is not a very significant increase. Your property tax collections exceeded the amended budget by almost $1.3 million. Your local sales tax and recordation taxes exceeded budget, but both are slightly down from the previous year. Business license revenue is higher than last year. This is due basically to the various road contracts and AP Hill construction contracts, which are one-time deals. As Ms. Curran alluded to, your motor vehicle license revenue is below the amount collected in the previous year, and hopefully that will pick up once people get on track of how we're doing collections, and they've stepped up collections. Your revenue from the Commonwealth and the federal revenues are both up from the amended budget due to increased grant fundings. Permits, fees, and charges for service were below your budget estimates. Most of your departments are below budget estimates as far as expenditures below budget estimates, even though salaries were restored. This reflects the departments were still conservative in their spendings. Your school revenues have been adjusted for some receivables, but the expenditures do not include the accounts payable. I do not have those numbers as of yet. Your school revenues are running on track currently. Same thing last year. Same thing with the expenditures. Your social service revenues are 94% of your amended budget, and the expenditures are 91% of your amended budget. CSA has been adjusted so that both the revenues and expenditures are equal at 99.7%. Your debt retirement revenues exceeded your estimated budget by 0.8%, not much. Now, expenditures for debt retirement, 98% budget. That's because the budget as it was done originally included some projects that we never did the borrowings for, so it skewed that out a little bit. Your total utility fund revenues are 84.6% of your budget. Your operating revenues were 99.7% of budget. Unfortunately, availability fees are only at 45.7% of budget. Your operating expenses were 86.4%, and your debt service payments for the utility fund were 100% of the budget. Again, I want to note that the operating revenues continue to be greater than the operating expenses in the utility fund. Unfortunately, because of the lack of availability fee collections, there is a transfer being shown of $771,000 from the general fund to the utility fund. And that's basically to offset part of the debt service payments. Tourism reflects 85% of revenue collected and 85.9% for expenditures. It also required the use of $1,300 of the tourism fund balance, not general fund balance. And this is due to the continued decline of the transient occupancy taxes. Most of your revenue sources for the major funds were steady with the exception of the communication taxes and motor vehicle license in the general fund, transient occupancy taxes in the tourism fund, and availability fees and utilities. All funds except the utility fund ended the year in a stable condition. Your general fund will end the year with a surplus of approximately $2 million, which will be added to your total fund balance. As it stands right now, unaudited, before my auditors get through with everything, your fund balance is going to be approximately $10.9 million, of which $4.9 million represents loans due to loans from other funds, not just utilities, other funds. And just wanted to bring up, at some point in time, the board will have to consider writing those off. And that's the end of my report. Anybody have any questions? I'll be glad to answer them.
Board members have a question of Mrs. Hatcher. Mr. Black.
None at this time.
Mr. Taylor. Mr. Underwood. Mr. Seeley.
The last comment you made, at some point the board will have to consider writing what off, I guess?
The due to froms, the loans between the funds, generally accepted accounting principles require that if there is no concentrated effort towards reducing, then under their guidelines, a due to from a loan between funds has no expectation of being paid. That's my blue Bible. So at some point in time, these will have to be written off. One of them has to do with the Dawn Fund, and that has to do with over several years of where expenses were being coordinated in one fund and being moved to another fund and then to another fund. That one, I can't even guarantee is an accurate number. So that one will eventually have to be written off.
Can we find out what funds you're actually talking about or what amounts of money that is? Yeah, because
Utility fund is close to $4.5 million. Social services is $84,000, but that rolls each year based on receivables and payables, and it's about $147,000 for the Dawn Utility Fund.
No, some of the utility fund numbers that you're talking about would be when we waive a connection fee or
That's
things of that
correct.
nature. So, and I think we got a list of that early, which
That's
was
correct.
like 2 or a million
I
or
think it
2
was $1
million,
million
whatever.
too.
So those, we're not, as the county, we're not going out and pressing the Board of Supervisors for that money for the utility fund.
No. It's
is the
basically
reality
to
with
clean
that.
it up, because if it sits there for years and years and years and years, which
That's what you say we have to write off.
that eventually
But we're basically changing that process so that
We are
every
reporting.
donation is coming out of the general fund
That's
as
correct.
opposed to utility fund, so we won't see that anymore. That's not really something where the utility fund just went crazy and spent $5 million.
that's correct.
It's them, through the Board of Supervisors and the citizens of the county, giving benefits to businesses that are coming in or things of that nature.
Yes,
So that's where it comes.
they will
But
be
it still-
recorded.
But it still would be nice to have that number.
It still would be nice, but at some point in time, we'll have to do something with it.
We're more than likely going to write it off. We just need to know what that number is to confirm what
Right.
we did in the past.
That's
I'd
correct.
just like to see what those numbers are so we know.
I just told you. $4.5 million for the utility fund, $82,000 for social services, and $147,000 for Dawn Utility Fund.
Okay.
And that million you talked about was just recent, because we've had 15 or 20 years of giving things to the utility fund
That's
or
correct.
through the utility fund.
And we're now showing actual transfers rather than running things in the due to from account to make that number just arbitrarily keep going higher. We're actually recording transfers to avoid that.
And since I see Mr. Schiebel, there's no thought about the utility fund bleeding money. We just had given things away before and weren't crediting it correctly.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay.
Why don't you, Ms. Hatcher, bring back to the board a resolution of whatever it is needed in order to get that off the books, because it's been on the books now for at least 15 years. And so let's move on with it. We hear about it every now and then, and Comes put a kafara every now and then, so let's get it over with. Let's get it out there and get it off the books and move on. So if you would bring the resolution to the board. In order
Be
have
glad
that
to.
done. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Appointments. Mr. Underwood, are you ready for appointment tonight?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman, I haven't talked to Mr. Smith, but I will in the next couple of days so we can move it to the next meeting.
Okay.
Give me an opportunity
Consent
to speak
agenda.
with
Is there an item on the consent agenda that any board member wishes to pull? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
The second.
him. Second.
Motion by Mr. Thomas, seconded by Mr. Underwood, that the consent agenda be approved as presented. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay, and the motion is carried. The board will take a 15-minute recess. Reconvene the Board of Supervisors meeting, and the next item on the agenda this evening is the public comment period. I'm going to ask Mrs. Hall to read the rules on the public comment period. It also applies to the public hearing, which would be held after the public comment period has ended. We do have a list of people that have signed up to speak this evening. I will give one last opportunity. If there's someone that's come in late that would like to speak during the public comment period, please raise your hand and we will pass out the sheet for you to sign up to speak. One in the very back. Pam, would you? Anyone else? Please raise your hand and Mrs. Hall will bring the sheet to you. While Mrs. Hall is passing the sheet to the individual, we will go ahead and start the public comment period. I would ask that as you come forward, you list your name and your voting district. Mr. Kelly, could you read the rules so we can go ahead and get started? Mr. Kelly will read the rules for the public comment period.
The public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing the public to speak to the board on any matter which is not scheduled for public hearing at this meeting. To help conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, please refrain from clapping or other public demonstrations of support or opposition. The public comment period shall not serve as a forum for debate with the board or a question and answer period with the board. Remarks shall be addressed only to the board and not to staff, the audience, or the media. All public comments shall be made in a respectful manner. Cursing and agnostic behavior are prohibited and shall be grounds for removal from the meeting. Comments should focus on matters or issues before the board or county and not individual board members or staff. Comments which single out an individual board member or staff may be ruled out of order by the chair. Each speaker shall clearly state his or her name and voting district if applicable. There shall be a time limit for each individual speaker of 3 minutes. No speaker shall address the board more than once during the public comment period at any single board meeting. The county administrator will time the speakers and notify them when their time has expired. Copies of the detailed rules are located on the back table.
Okay, Mr. Cully will call your name out. As he calls your name out, please come forward and make your comments. The public comment period is declared open.
Hope Lawson.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board, I have some documents that I'd like to pass out. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me this time to speak. My name is Hope Larson, and I am a South Carolina State resident, so I am not one of your constituents. I am, however, the mother of a student at Abundant Life Academy. My son's name is Jacob. I've handed you each a photo of my family. I would like for you to know who we are. My husband was a 26-year active duty officer in the United States Army. We have 3 sons, James, Ryan, and our youngest, Jacob. It is Jacob who attends ALA. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Jacob. While serving overseas, My youngest son, at 3 years old, took a 62-foot fall. He should have died, but he didn't, because God spared his life. Upon returning to the United States, Jacob became very ill. He was diagnosed with a form of common variable immunodeficiency, which means his immune system doesn't work properly. Jacob spent the greater part of his life, up until about age 10, in the hospital. His times in public school, though intermittent, along with his small size at the time, it made him the perfect target for bullies. Jacob was bullied unmercifully, both verbally and physically, until we had to remove him from our public school system for his own safety. This took a huge emotional toll on him. If I had the time to share some of the stories of the things that happened to him, I know you would feel the heaviness in your heart that we have felt in ours. As Jacob entered the middle school years, which is often a difficult time for many kids, the emotional toll continued. Jacob's self-esteem was crushed. Although he is a very intelligent and talented child, he's an avid reader, loves to sing, to help his dad build things, you name it. Inside, he was becoming more and more sad about not feeling safe to attend school, his lack of friends outside of our small church, and began to believe the things the bullies had said to him over and over. Jacob began to cut himself. He felt that he deserved the pain. We got Jacob into counseling, and our counselor suggested that we look into a structured program that would help rebuild Jacob inside. We searched high and low all over the country and finally found Abundant Life Academy. This would be a safe place for Jacob. Their positive peer culture teaches kids how to work together to accomplish great things. The staff truly cares about each and every one of these kids. Most importantly to us as parents, we were not placing our child into a treatment program that had potential for bullies. Youth with drug problems or out-of-control anger issues, alcoholics. Our child could not survive in such a place. Jacob has been at ALA since June. His progress has been amazing. Just this past week, we talked to him on the phone, and we could hear happiness in his voice. It's been a long time since we had the heartwarming feeling that it came with hearing our son laugh. ALA is trying to make this move to Virginia, and we hope and pray, not just because they are a fantastic program in Utah, but because they see and know the need here on this side of the country. As Jacob's mom, and for all the other moms here on the East Coast with students at ALA, I humbly and respectfully and desperately ask that you will rescind your prior ruling on this, which is allowed for by Robert's Rules of Orders, and please vote to allow ALA the special exception that's needed. Again, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lawson.
Kevin James.
I knew it was a mistake to follow her. I just knew I should have signed up quicker. My name's Kevin James. I live in Sparta. I guess that's the Bowling Green District. And when this whole thing came up, I got excited, met the guys that are a part of it, was excited that the facility was going to be used. My family has enjoyed it from back in the day when it was Camp Easter Seal. Was a part of Remuda because they had us in there as chapel speakers. And here's another organization that wants to help kids and help them turn their lives around and make use of a beautiful facility, arguably one of the nicest facilities in our county that nobody even knows is there. It is sitting empty and going to be auctioned off in pieces. And I just thought, wow, what a God thing that these guys want to come. Was so just beside myself when I heard how the vote went. I was out of town. On my way home, I got a call about what had happened. And since that time, have been working feverishly to try to understand how we could have gotten to that place. This is a great organization. Concerns that came up, I can understand concerns coming up. Some misinformation got out in what a word means. And so people were afraid. There's nothing wrong with people being afraid and having concerns. But we go from, we're on the road to having a great business that's going to bring dollars to the community, jobs to the community, make use of a great facility, put that into the county on the map a little, have families in and out, staying in our hotels, buying gas and food in our county. We go from that being on track and getting a 6-0 vote from these guys to not to table it, to figure out, oh, there's some concerns, to it is canned and gone and done with no chance to bring it up, unless one of the 4 who voted against it chooses to be a statesman today and say, you know, I think we ought to reconsider. Maybe we were hasty. Maybe we didn't consider the appeals of the entire community. So I was frustrated. since coming home, I'm really encouraged. I mean, the spirit that was out at the facility on Sunday afternoon with, I don't know, 50, 75, 100 people there. I didn't count. That's unusual for the preacher, but I didn't count. But there was gobs of people there, and everybody was respectful. There were people on both sides of the issue, folks who have had their concerns. They asked questions. Folks who were very supportive on what do we need to do to make this happen. And so it is my request that someone would be that statesman, bring it up to reconsider. I think most all of the concerns have been addressed. I know the security ones have. There's a letter to that effect in your packets, I believe. And I just think it's a win-win-win with almost no downside. That y'all have to help me out on the downside. This story, there was another family that shared at the meeting that drove in because they have such a heart for this organization. It would be an asset to our community. The 120 or 130 hours that each student of community has to do community service each month. Can you imagine the impact of having these teenagers build into our community, help our churches, help our senior adults who need their leaves raked, their gutters cleaned, somebody just to drop by and visit them? Where else would you have that kind of investment in our community from any organization? I respectfully would ask that you guys reconsider. I think it would help bring our community together. I think it is a win-win. It would be a huge win for you guys because I don't know how well your phones work or your emails work. Mine has been blown up about this thing, and I can't do a thing about it except come talk because that's what I do. You guys can make a difference, and I can tell you these are some sharp folks who want to do a great thing to build into the lives of kids. So I would ask you to reconsider it and then ultimately approve ALA coming.
Thank you, Pastor James.
Dorella DeCedarfeld.
Good evening. I am in the Madison District, Norella DeCedarfeld, and I've lived here since '88. This is my first meeting I've ever been to because I feel really impelled to come and ask for you to, as they have just said, reconsider your vote on the ALA school. I had applied to the school for cooking there when I saw it advertised, and I did my due diligence and researched it, and I felt like this was just such a wonderful facility for kids, teenagers. I wrote the letter that was in the Caroline Progress about my daughter. It was published last week, I believe, or the week before, that she had had problems when she was a teenager, and with the outside supports of a place like this, she has now got a PhD, and she's a very accountable human being. And it's all, you know, having that type of support that's needed for kids, especially now with all the electronics and technology. The kids don't even have to talk to each other, much less their parents. So I'd appreciate it if you all would really reconsider and revote and pass this and move it forward. Thank you.
Robert Lawson. Lawson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I am also an out-of-state resident, but I come to you as a father of a student at ALA. My son is Jacob, and my wife has already told you about the circumstances surrounding his enrollment at ALA. I would like to give you some perspective from a parent's point of view. When faced with seeking a safe and loving environment to help Jacob cope with his issues, we as parents were greatly concerned about him being far away from us. With that in mind, we scoured the eastern seaboard looking for a place that shared our concern for our son, shared the strong Christian values that we have tried to instill in all of our boys, and would be a safe haven for him. Unfortunately, there was no such programs meeting all of those criteria available. I'm not saying there are no programs on the East Coast, there are, but not any that would be the positive environment that Jacob needs. So my wife embarked on a multi-state journey to find that place. When she found ALA, she was sure we'd struck gold. She called me on a Friday night to let me know, and not wanting her to bear the responsibility of making that decision alone, I jumped in my car and drove from Baltimore to the Salt Lake City area and was there on Sunday evening. This is that important to us. Upon touring ALA and meeting the students and the faculty there, I shared Hope's assessment. This was the place for Jacob. However, making that decision came with a cost. Part of the family restoration process requires parents and their child to be together. That means several trips to Utah over the course of the year-long program. Since faith-based care is not covered by insurance, the trips become an additional financial burden to an already financially demanding situation. So much so that we know of parents who are not able to commit to this kind of care for their children because they can't absorb the associated travel cost. Our commitment to Jacob's care has cleaned out our savings and my retirement. But we will gladly lose all of what we have if it means our son gets the care that he needs. Having a place like ALA available to parents of deserving kids on the East Coast of this country will open doors to so many kids and so many families that would otherwise be relegated to the often cold and harsh environments of the few programs that are available, either clinical or wilderness, and lack the healing value of the equine program that ALA plans. As an Army veteran with 26 years of service to this country, I fought to make a difference and to uphold the foundations of our country, that this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And some of the people of this community are here tonight, people that chose you to represent them, and here to tell you that they want you to support this action. Finally, we see our country's youth begging for help from issues like bullying, like the bullying that seems so prevalent today, and we hear them and the adults begging for change. Now, when faced with the opportunity to provide that change, there are some that are saying NIMBY, not in my backyard. This distinguished council has an opportunity in front of it, an opportunity to be the example, to lead the way, and to be the change the children of this nation, children like my son Jacob, need to grow into happy, healthy, God-loving Americans. And I ask you, please seize this opportunity to be that change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson.
Cheryl Duke.
Thank you for having me. Sorry, that was very touching. My name is Cheryl Dudek, and I am a resident of Baltimore, actually. I have a daughter who is a student at ALA. I have a picture of her. My husband couldn't be here tonight, but I wanted to share that she's 6 months into the program, a little further along than Jacob. And I'd like to share what the program has meant to her and to us as a family. Our daughter grew up in a home with two parents that love her very much. We've been married for over 22 years. She has 3 siblings. You think she walks on water. We're a family that lives and works out our salvation daily, trusting in the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross. We don't understand why things happen or when things started to crumble for her. Here we are on 9/11, and we still don't understand why that happened. What I do know is that her dad and I tried everything we could to think and do to help her. We made rules stricter. We made a curfew earlier. We prayed more. We sought counsel. She ended up on medication for depression. We read parenting books. We did as much as we could in our own world. Nothing seemed to make an impact. She was still making self-destructive decisions. She seemed to be getting worse, the cutting, the drugs, the alcohol, and I could go on, but I won't. So we started looking online for schools that could help, just like Jacob's family. So you Google boarding schools, and thousands of boarding schools are out there in the country. But then you Google boarding therapeutic schools, and it goes to hundreds. And then you Google boarding therapeutic evangelical Christian schools, and it goes to 2. 2 in the country. ALA is one of them. Finally, one night in March, while we were in the process of looking for all of this, she decided that she no longer wanted to live. She wanted to die. She was done.